everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Geek Warning podcast from the Escape Collective, your one-stop shop for maybe not quite everything you need to know this week in the world of bicycle tech, but maybe just the more interesting stuff. Let's just call it that. Anyway, holy crap! It clearly must be spring, at least in like the northern hemisphere, because we're definitely still getting flooded with a whole bunch of new product announcements. We've got fresh goodies to talk about from Chris King and Wolftooth and Bike Yoke and 3-Teen Forge+Bond, among others. We're going to chat a little bit about how hookless road rims and tires apparently aren't going to shed their stigma anytime soon, seemingly. We're going to discuss aerodynamics in downhill mountain bike racing. Dave's going to have a little chat with Terry Seidler, better known as Better Shifting Terry, about a pretty intriguing patent that was recently discovered from Shimano that might offer up some clues to a possible upcoming fully wireless group set. We're also going to talk a little bit about how the automotive world seems to somehow be embracing e-bikes. We're going to talk about what to look for in gravel wheel sets and an unexpected place on your drivetrain to pay attention to for this week's PSA. I'm James Huang. Joining me today is Escape Collective Senior Tech Editor Dave Rome. Dave, you and I actually just recorded another Geek Warning podcast we did 2 days ago. What did we chat about, and what do our listeners have to look forward to?
Well overdue, but we finally recorded another Ask a Wrench episode, which is
so overdue.
Yeah, we were answering questions that I hope people weren't waiting on because they might not have ridden their bike in months if they were. Sorry, members.
Quick, how do I perform CPR?
But yeah, Ask a Wrench, it's part of our bonus episodes where our members get access to the full length of it, and if you choose not to support the creation of our content, then you get access to some of it. So yeah, it's really something that we thank you to our members that do support Escape Collective.
For the people who don't subscribe or who don't become members, just FYI, we're going to take all of your email addresses and add them to like a bunch of spam bots. So just fair warning.
Probably shouldn't make that joke. Please still give us your email addresses. Yes. We don't sell your data, just to be clear. So, okay.
Dave, before we get into the news today, we have yet another corrections corner this week. Dave, apparently 10 lashes weren't enough for you to learn your lesson. What egregious error, huge, did you commit this time?
I really, really need to stop talking about which bikes have round seat posts and which bikes have D-shaped seat posts because yet again I got one wrong. I mentioned when James, you were talking about the Asparo, and I said the Asparo 5 will probably end up having a D-shaped seat post like it currently does. Bow. The current generation of Asparo 5, despite me testing it a few years ago, does not have a D-shaped seat post. It actually has a round post, and I was mistaking it for the Caledonia 5. So yeah, thanks to Max Reese out there for pointing this out. But yeah, anyway, I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna mention seat post shapes for this episode from here on out.
Dave, all I have to say is pull it together.
Yeah,
because like I said, 10 lashes apparently weren't enough. So please don't make us take away your 3D printer next time.
Okay, thank you.
Because we are going to just reach into your home and take it away.
Oh no!
All right. Well, we do usually start with the news going on in the tech front on this show, but we're going to mix things up just a little bit since the Giro is going on right now. So with barely 11K going on in stage 2, Tadej Pogacar got a flat on his front NV wheel. And unfortunately, before he could get a new wheel from his team car, which was like immediately right behind him, there was a right-hand corner that he had to navigate. And as many people listening to this show can probably attest, a bare carbon rim, well, not bare, like it was just a flat tire, but a carbon rim resting right on tarmac doesn't exactly have a whole lot of traction. So as you'd expect, Tadej took a little tumble. Nothing big, thankfully. I didn't think anything of that incident at the time. I mean, flats happen all the time in racing after all, and it wasn't like the tire blew off the rim or anything. But there were definitely a bunch of comments, both from our own Escape Collective members and on YouTube videos and forums and stuff, just immediately calling out Hookless, seemingly because he had a flat. Yeah, like just because he had a flat period. So basically, people seem kind of ready to blame Hookless for just about anything. So what I'm wondering, he was on a hookless wheel, just FYI, from what I understand. But what I'm wondering is how much have seemingly suspicious issues regarding hookless road wheels earlier this season, how much has that damaged the public perception of hookless road wheels in general?
A whole lot. I think tubeless road in as a broader sense has a pretty strong, pretty bad stigma against it. But certainly hookless in this case copping a lot of blame when it didn't deserve to be blamed. But also, I think a lot of people are pretty quick to point the finger at tubeless in general not being, right for the application. And again, I don't really think that's fair, but I don't know. It's not unexpected of people on the internet, but I think it's also, partly, when you do see such big failures at the pinnacle of the sport, then you also can't really blame people for being so scared and annoyed about this technology. Not referencing Pogacar's recent failure.
I find it interesting that you and I certainly look at kind of a broader tech landscape than just road. And it's interesting to me that there are really no similar sort of suspicions with hookless in the mountain bike world. And in fact, hookless wheels almost seem to generate like the opposite reaction from people, just because in that world, that sort of rim format has seemingly been used to great effect to actually make those rims a lot stronger.
Yeah. Thicker bead, better strength against rim strike.
Yeah. I mean, I think people seem like the argument there, they're able to make sort of a blunter edge, and the rim itself is stronger. That hook section is more prone to failure. From an impact anyway. I guess in theory. But it's just it was just so intriguing to me to see all these comments just blaming hookless when it seemed pretty clear to me no, he just got a front puncture and then he was just riding on essentially a rim. The tire was still on there. It hadn't come unseated or anything. But he just didn't have any grip, and you just can't turn on a front wheel where it's flat and the carbon rim is just on the ground. Yeah.
And it sounds like from the report I heard that there was a bit of frustration involved there. Like he had asked for the replacement bike before the corner. The team said keep going around the corner. So, he was probably a bit distracted as well, not full focus on where his wheels were going. And but either way, not the fault of hookless.
Well, I think we had said before when we had been discussing this topic that this probably wasn't one that was going to be over anytime soon. And I wouldn't say that this is another chapter in that discussion, but it's just to the point where it almost seems like it's like press fit in when we were talking about bottom brackets. Even if you do it well, and it's just become radioactive almost to the point where people just don't if you see that word, it's just an instant non-starter for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually, from my own point of view, I still shy people away from purchasing hookless wheels. If it comes with their bike, I'm going to tell people, use them, but just be sure to always use a tubeless tire, follow the pressure guidelines. But I don't recommend, at the moment at least, I typically don't recommend hookless road wheels to people. Mountain bike and gravel, zero issues. But when we're talking about road, I'm still very hesitant. So, anyway, I think we're just at the end. I think we're at the start of the story, really. I think there's years ahead if brands are going to continually push for this. I think it's going to be many, many years for them to prove the case of it.
It almost kind of reminds me of the early days of RockShox Judy's. It's just going to be this thing that just sticks in people's minds for God knows how long at this point. I mean, that whole Judy debacle was it was easily a full 10 years until people finally stopped talking about it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's old, way old, way back in the rearview mirror at this point. Anyway, speaking of mountain bikes, we're going to shift gears just a bit and talk about downhill mountain bike racing. So the World Cup recently took place in Fort William, Scotland. And I'm not going to talk about what happened in the racing, but we are going to talk about what people were wearing. Because, for people who have been following the sport for a very, very long time, you sort of have that iconic image of John Tomac screaming downhill in sort of that rubberized skin suit. Well, no one seemed to be wearing the equivalent of a body condom at Fort William, but there were some pretty awfully tight-fitting kits that were out there that seemed to clearly kind of push the envelope a little bit. They definitely were not technically one-piece skin suits since they are still technically banned by the UCI for downhill. But
the use of Lycra, road style Lycra, I think is roughly what the UCI guidelines call for. That's still banned. And that was banned because downhill is meant to look cool. So, but there's
clearly some very, very careful tailoring going on here. But either way, it seems pretty clear to me that, and I've actually always wondered about this. It seems pretty clear that teams and riders now are considering aero efficiency more than they used to, or at least they've always known about it, and they're trying to exploit some loopholes. So, given the margins of victory and the speeds that we're talking about here, it's not surprising. But what do you think?
So let's rewind a bit. Downhill used to, they used to race in Lycra skin suits. They used to race in, they used to remove the peaks off their helmet for speed. That was probably 10, 15 years ago at this point. And then the UCI stepped in based on the request from some brands, I believe, that they wanted to keep sort of a cooler image for the sport. So they enforced the use of visors on helmets. They enforced the use of baggier clothing, kind of to, in reality, keep it more like looking a bit more like motocross than some kind of, road cycling. So, ever since riders, I guess as those margins got tighter, because we're talking about typically 3 to 4 minute long races, time trial, where the winning margins are often, 0.0 of, 2 decimal points of a second.
Small fractions of a second sometimes.
Yeah. These marginal gains absolutely can make the difference. And I'd say in probably even the most recent, last 5 years, I've heard of the big teams, like the Specialized sponsor teams, the Trek sponsor teams, getting their riders into the wind tunnels and working on their tucks, working on, how to wear their clothing, where to put their visor, that kind of thing. I have heard of this all happening. This year it seems like it's taken a step up, and I'd say the clothing some of them are wearing very, very tailored, and none more than Tiny Seagrave, who rides for a Canyon team, and she had this one-piece Fox speed suit, which sort of was all the talk of the internet.
It was very pink.
Yeah, it was very pink. It was quite tight, I think we'll see other riders go this way. I suspect it's not just going to be in clothing, though, because certainly on the road, we identified a long time ago that the rider constitutes the bulk of the aero drag in the whole bike plus rider system. Yeah. But that said, the bike certainly is not nothing. And aerodynamic efficiency is not something that we have seen even a little bit in downhill equipment, as far as the bike and the wheels and stuff like that. It certainly seems like I certainly could see this sparking kind of like an aero arms race. Yeah, for sure. I think downhill is kind of unique, though, because the bike needs to do a very specific thing. First and foremost, it needs to get the rider down the hill as fast as possible. So they can't compromise on the speed, the performance attributes of the bike. It still has to have amazing brakes. The suspension has to be amazing. There has to be a certain amount of stiffness, a certain amount of strength in the frame. And then weight is also still a factor. I think, and then you've got these big chunky tires, which in reality, such knobby tires are going to impact whether you can make a rim deep or not. So, or whether there's any benefit to doing that. So I don't know. I think we will see clothing get tighter. I think there's probably some work in helmets to be done, probably something in the goggles that they wear, maybe even in the shoes. But as far as the bikes go, I think it might still be some while before we see anything there, because from my point of view, making airfoil shaped suspension is probably just a cost too high for the brands to justify doing. Dave, if you were a betting man, and I'm pretty sure you're not, but if you were, what would you say are the odds that Specialized has had its downhill riders in their wind tunnel already? Oh, no, it's 100%. I know for sure. Yeah, I mentioned it before. They have. Yep. So, there's no question there. That's been they've been doing that for a few years now. So as far as I'm aware, like even Troy Brosnan, when he was on Specialized, which he hasn't been for years, I believe I saw something. I could be making this up, but I'm pretty sure he did it.
But I think that's been more for position, though, not for gear. Yeah. I guess what I'm wondering is, what's the likelihood that they've already been looking at some stuff in terms of gear in the wind tunnel?
Oh, I would think it's incredibly likely as well. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the men's, their clothing has been getting tighter and tighter in recent years, more and more tailored. Like Loic Bruni is a multiple-time world champion in the sport. His clothing has been getting noticeably tighter in recent years. Amaury Piron, which is another French rider, one of Loic's main rivals. Again, his clothing's pretty snug. So I think they've definitely been looking at it. I think it's just more noticeable this year with these one-piece speed suits coming out, which are technically still baggy, but also almost not. So I think it would be interesting to have Ronan offer some input on this. Not that he watches downhill, but
he's going to now.
Yeah, I would think yes, they're making the clothing tighter, but what we've seen in road and time trial is like new materials being used.
Yeah, like textured fabrics, stuff like that.
Textured fabrics. And from what I can see, I haven't seen that specifically in downhill. So there's definitely some gains to be had. And there's enough money in the sport now that I don't question that brands are looking into it.
This could be very, very interesting seasons to come.
Yep.
All right. Well, kind of moving on to more gear stuff. So Chris King just announced its 4th generation of hubs, which it's interesting. It's careful to point out is not better in the sense of being like lighter, smoother, faster engaging or whatever. Like they're making it very clear it's not a performance thing. Yeah. So rather they're saying, quote, "These improvements will keep the cost of ownership lower while keeping those bees buzzing for even longer," unquote. Dave, what have they done here? And why are we kind of so excited about it?
It's exciting because, as you just mentioned, so this is a Chris King Gen 4 is what they're calling it. And it's basically applicable to their almost entire range of hubs. It is their entire range of hubs. And they've basically created a much simpler way of manufacturing the free hubs. And as a result, they've greatly reduced the cost of replacement free hubs. So if you need to change your drivetrain from, say, Shimano to SRAM, it's no longer $380. It's now going to cost you $80 US, which is a significant change. It's also cool because Chris King, they were a certified B Corp, and then they decided that B Corp, I think, are they still a B Corp? Am I about to?
My understanding is
they left it, right?
They let it lapse mainly because it was a costing thing. Like it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So, but
they were like the OG sustainable company in cycling, and they still are.
Regardless of the certification, having been there myself, they are like crazy about being eco-conscious.
They're on a complete another level to anyone else in cycling in this regard. And of course, they've introduced something new, but it remains backwards compatible with pretty much all their old hubs. So, you to make that upgrade, you need a conversion kit, which includes a new axle, a new preload collar, and then the free hub, and then your hub would be updated to the new system. So, I just really like that companies, support pre-existing product. And in Chris King's case, as you said, James, they've come out and said, like, this isn't a performance advantage. If you've got Chris King hubs at the moment, don't feel the need to get this new one. Like, that's not the purpose of this. It's just to create future easier compatibility and easier access to our products. So kudos to Chris King on this. It's really cool. And perhaps my favorite little detail of all of this is that for now, like their disc brake center lock road and gravel hubs, the R45D, historically you've actually had to remove the preload lock ring off the hub in order to take off your rotor lock ring, and they have finally fixed that issue with this new system. So you can upgrade your new hub with a conversion kit. Sorry, you can upgrade your old R45 hub with the new conversion kit to get this benefit.
Yeah, so that for sure is like a nice usability improvement. But it is super interesting because Chris King almost seems to be like most companies, basically, they look for reasons for people to buy more of their stuff, right? Like they make it lighter, stiffer, whatever. Chris King, they don't play that game. And if anything, they almost, in a sense, kind of like do themselves a disservice by making their stuff so user serviceable and so durable in general. And it's for them, it's not a question of getting existing customers to buy more stuff. For them, it's just a matter of finding more customers for their stuff, period.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, their stuff lasts incredibly long and is designed to be wholly serviceable and not a throwaway product. And it's pretty cool to think that a headset from the 90s can still be serviced to be brought back to new. I think
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's like I'm sure someone could do some sort of like business case study where they'd be like, these guys are idiots.
Yeah, but I truly, I love what Chris King does as a company, and I think if more in cycling were to follow that sort of ethos of full serviceability and backwards compatibility, and focusing on making products to last a lifetime, I think, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I think I'd feel like cycling would be more ethical as far as sustainability goes.
I think we would feel a little less like we're on sort of the kind of like the never ending rat race or hamster wheel sort of thing of just constantly chasing the next new thing.
Yeah, for sure. Which is ironic to talk about on a podcast that talks about the new things. But new thing,
we talk about new things, Dave, but we also question a lot of new things. So
yes,
that's kind of the point here.
That's true.
All right. Well, moving on to I guess another hub-related thing on a wheel front. So CSS Composites is a company based in Utah here in the U.S. They make pretty much all of the thermoplastic carbon fiber bike rims on the market, regardless of whose brand name is on the label. CSS
including
also
Chris King.
Including Chris King, indeed, yep. Mm-hmm. So CSS has its own outward-facing wheel brand called Forge+Bond, which is kind of a reference to how they make their rims. And after previously launching like in the mountain bike and gravel segment, so they now have 4 what they're calling all-road wheel sets. They're all hookless. Interestingly, they're saying like they're 4 all-road wheel sets that you have them in 35 or 45 mil depths. They're all 25 mil inner widths. Again, all hookless. 2 different hub sets to choose from, so you essentially have 2 different price points. Interestingly, they're saying the minimum tire size is 28C and the maximum tire pressure is 90 PSI, neither of which is remotely ETRTO or ISO approved. So Forge+Bond, first of all, if you're listening, please look into that because you should. And just in case you're not listening, expect an email from me. I will send that basically as soon as we're done here because that's a red flag. Anyway, pricing's not too bad. $2,200 for the nicer ones, $1,250 for the cheaper ones. Anyway, CSS or Forge+Bond or whoever, they've always made the same claims as far as the advantages of thermoplastic carbon wheels instead of traditional thermosets, like a smoother, more damp ride quality, better impact resistance, at least the prospect of easy recyclability since you can sort of just grind the stuff up and kind of mold something else out of them. My question is, thermoplastic seems to have a stronger case to make off-road, where like impact resistance is definitely a big thing. More damped ride quality, I would say, also a pretty good thing for off-road riding. Are these things that the road market care about, though?
Not necessarily, no. The damped ride quality, I think, is becoming more of a factor with road choice. But, I mean, the deeper you make the rim, the less effective that is going to be, I mean, simply put. I think road market is very much still weight focused in this regard. So if there's a weight penalty associated with these, then that is going to be a barrier to purchase.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because, like I said, they have 35 mil and 45 mil wheel sets, and the lightest 35 mil wheel set they offer has Industry 9 hubs. And that wheel set's not super light. It's just under 1,500 grams. And then the lightest 45 mil set is like closer to 1,550. So like pretty average. I mean, it's not heavy.
It's not heavy, but
they're not numbers that are going to stick out to people.
No, in my mind, like I almost look at those weights. I almost look at road wheel weights as like a price guide. You know, like a 15 to 1600 gram wheel set to me is like a mid-range 45 mil deep wheel, and something below the 1400 gram mark I kind of assume to be a bit more expensive. And I know there are examples outside of that in either direction, but for me, I straight away I'd once combined with the price, it's not a wheel set I would personally be looking to buy, and I would think a lot of other people are probably in the same boat. So, and that's probably unfair and a little silly to obsess over 100 grams that much. But hey, that's where we're at.
I mean, you're right, though. The road market is definitely very still weight focused. One kind of curious thing that just occurred to me, and this may call for another corrections corner next week if I missed something here. But like I said, the two price points are 2200 and 1250. The 1250 wheels are they're built a little bit differently, but they also come with Bitex hubs, which are like somewhat generic Taiwanese. I mean, they're good quality, generally really well regarded Taiwanese hubs. The $2,200 ones come with, like I said, Industry 9. They're using some other higher end partners and stuff. I'm not really sure why you wouldn't just buy the 1250 ones and then just buy a pair of i9 road hubs and that would be
not
cheaper.
Everyone wants to rebuild wheels with new spokes and the labor.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you were doing that sort of thing yourself, that would be that'd be like an easy DIY hack.
Maybe. Still, the cost of spokes is not going to be nothing. So
they're not going to be nothing, and spokes are far more expensive than people realize.
Yeah.
But
so
anyway,
I think that's probably why you wouldn't.
little bit of a curiosity there, but anyway, I think I like what Forge+Bond is doing in general as far as like the kind of environmental aspect of their rims. I mean, they do claim to produce an awful lot less waste, and the waste that they do produce, they're molding or like trying to mold into more like useful things. I mean, I think last I checked, the only thing that they're making are like molded carbon fiber tire levers, which are quite expensive
and hardly filling a world need. But
yeah. So like maybe they just have a giant barrel or like a growing barrel of scrap somewhere that they're trying to figure out what to do with. But at least you can do something with that stuff as opposed to not being able to do anything with it. So there's that.
Yeah.
But anyway, intriguing. I haven't requested a set or anything like that. But to be honest, I'm not really feeling like a super burning need to bring them in because I'm not really sure. I need to think about this one a little bit more.
Yeah, you have reviewed a set of Forge+Bond wheels before, though. So
I did review the
there
Chris
are some
Kings.
Thoughts.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think they were the ARD 44s, and they were nice. But again, like when you have a rim that deep, like how much of a difference in ride quality is there really, particularly with people running larger road tires now and running them at softer pressures? It didn't seem like a super compelling argument especially having ridden thermoplastic carbon fiber mountain bike wheels, which seemed to me like had a little bit more of an influence, and certainly on gravel it was more noticeable. But on the road, not so sure. To be determined.
It's probably worth noting that you're hypersensitive to this kind of stuff from a lifetime of being fussy and professionally fussy. And so I think, if you're only just picking up on the nuance of difference, I'd say most people, it'd be all the same.
They're not going to care. Most likely Anyway.
All
right, Dave, I alluded earlier to a Shimano patent that our buddy Better Shifting Terry discovered a little bit ago. You caught up with him for a little one-on-one chat. So let's take a quick listen to that and see what Terry's got on his mind here.
All right, Terry from bettershifting.com. Welcome back. I think
Thanks, Nate.
It might be your first time on Geek Warning. Maybe I've spoken to you on a previous podcast before, but it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's nice to be back.
All right. Well, you're the one in this world that obsesses more about Di2 than any other. Maybe some engineers in Japan working for Shimano might have you beat, but otherwise you're the one to speak to. And you came across a patent the other day, maybe about 24 hours ago, that looked kind of intriguing. So what is this patent for?
Yeah, so I monitor Shimano websites every 15 minutes or so, and I came across this patent. And it's basically about detachable batteries on Di2 derailleurs. It's interesting.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so within it, you've got, there's a few things that you spotted within this, but basically it shows front and rear derailleurs, and both with now integrated batteries, which would imply fully wireless shifting to be in line with what SRAM and Campagnolo have done for a while now. So yeah, I mean, what does it look like? Can you create a picture of what that rear derailleur, where the battery is within this patent?
Yeah. So, looking at the images, it seems to be between the servo and the pulley, and it has a detachable cover that slides out, and you can insert the battery and take it out. Yeah, it looks clean.
Yeah, it's sort of more integrated in their drawings than existing wireless derailleurs from SRAM and Campagnolo that we've seen. The battery's kind of almost built into like one of the parallelogram plates of the derailleur in a sense. Like it's sort of pretty tucked into the derailleur versus external of. So,
so I'm not sure how big the battery is going to be, because it's probably quite small, but it looks interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's a charger shown in the patent as well. So that would probably imply that it's not a removable battery or not intended to be removed for charging, that it's being charged on the bike. Do you agree with that? Or what do you think?
I'm not sure. It could be removable, because they also show a charger with multiple battery slots. But there's also talk in the patent about charging it on the derailleur itself, and the rear derailleur still has a charge port. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, obviously patents, they don't necessarily mean there's product coming that exactly matches these drawings, but they certainly can give a bit of indication into what Shimano is at least working on and figures is worth protecting. Within that document, there's also a discussion of mountain bike and gravel with a different looking derailleur. Is there anything you picked up in there that's worth noting?
Well, I think if we're going to see this in the real world, it'll probably be on the mountain bike. I think that's up for a new version the soonest. And there's talk of a clutch and stuff like that. I also saw in the patent that they don't exclude any bikes. No, it doesn't have to have 2 wheels. It could be unicycle. Yeah. Could be anything really.
Yeah. So yeah, that mountain bike derailleur, I mean, gravel, whatever you want to call it, the off-road derailleur looks like it kind of has a bit of a SRAM aesthetic to it in terms of the shaping. Looks like it would maybe mount to a universal derailleur hanger versus like a traditional derailleur hanger. So that's kind of intriguing and aligns with some patents previously seen from Shimano that would suggest that they're working on such a thing. But yeah, integrated battery into the derailleur makes sense, more so for mountain bike than anything else, because you've got dropper posts that take up the seat tube and don't give you an easy place to mount a battery. So especially for mountain bikes, it would make sense that Shimano would have to go this path. So I mean, anything else that kind of came out from that patent that you think's interesting? I think you noted on your Instagram that perhaps there's one more gear in the drawings.
Yeah, I noticed that there's 13 gears in the drawings. They don't state the number of gears anywhere, so that could just be an image. But it is interesting to see. And there's still the regular port for the Di2 wire.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So 13 speed, potentially wireless. I mean, the patent sort of teasing us if anything, but I mean, what's your best guess? Crystal ball, what's your best guess for when or if we might see this type of stuff hit the market? Like, do you have any idea based on when we've previously seen patents from Shimano and when we've then seen it roll out?
Well, I would love to see this soon, but I don't think it'll be this year. So yeah, I'd say in about 2 or maybe 3 years, we'll see this.
Okay.
Hopefully. And it could take longer. It could never appear, but yeah.
All right, 2 to 3 years. We'll see how close you are, and we'll check in 2 to 3 years, see how you're doing.
Cool.
All good. All right. Well, in the meantime, I'm just going to give you a plug because you have created a pretty amazing resource for anyone with the Di2 bike. So, bettershifting.com. It's your hobby. I wouldn't say it's not your day job, but it's absolutely a passion project for you, and it's definitely a resource worth supporting. If you've got a Di2 bike and any questions, Terry probably has it answered already. So
yeah, if you need repairs, there's a Di2 GP.
Yes. Yeah. That so Di2 GP is based out of the UK, and they're one of the only people in the world that seem willing to actually rebuild Di2 derailleurs and shifters, which even if you have no interest in it, their account's worth a follow just to see how it's done.
Yeah. I tried, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I don't have that skill set either. I've tried to crack open a derailleur and I made an absolute mess of it, to be honest. So it's he's got some skills. So anyway, all right, Terry, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Dave. So I guess we're going to find out what we're going to see from Shimano soon-ish. We'll see. But now that we have found out what's on Terry's mind, let's see what's on our minds. I got something.
Oh,
on my
I like
mind.
what you did there.
You like
nice.
that? Nice little segue, huh? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I do have something on my mind this week. So I think regular listeners will know that. I mean, I'm kind of into cars. I read about them a lot and whatever. But I think it's fair to say that a lot of people are certainly familiar with the whole micromobility movement that's going on. Like governments certainly are trying to decrease carbon emissions and congestion, urban areas, that sort of thing. And I don't think we really need to convince anyone listening to this show that getting around by bike is often a pretty good idea. But what's been surprising to me is how I'm actually seeing on occasion car publications and like pretty hardcore car culture publications suggesting to people that e-bikes in particular might be a good option for people, and e-cargo bikes in particular. So one of the latest ones that I ran across was on a site called autoblog.com, and it was titled, "Thinking of Getting a Second Car? An E-Bike Might Be a Better Choice." So in that article, I know. Well, there's a little bit of a twist here. I'll get to that. So in that article, they're making the pitch that e-bikes are, they're cheaper to buy initially and certainly cheaper to operate long term. There's obviously an environmental benefit. You spend less time stuck in traffic. And they even point out a bunch of e-cargo bike options for people who want to haul stuff around and like stuff and people. And, they outline this laundry list of features and terms that people who aren't familiar with e-bikes would probably want to know. A twist. So this was tagged under Autoblog's, quote, deals and promotions label. So it was clearly some kind of sponsored post. But still, it's like that article falls under the same masthead as reviews of like V12 supercars and massive SUVs. So I'm still going to take that as a win, if only just like they're still putting that in front of people.
Who do you think paid for it?
Dave, it's interesting because when I was looking at that article, I was trying to see if there was any one particular bike brand that dominated the images that were on there. There was no message of bike brands. There is a specialized in the feature image, but there's also a Trek and some other brands. I think there's like REI little cargo bikes in there too. So who was it? It's hard to say. Like maybe it was someone like Bosch. I guess I haven't done a list to see. I haven't checked to see what motor systems were on those bikes. So that's possible. But usually when you see some sort of sponsored post like that, it's pretty clear that there's a brand associated with it, and there was not a clear brand associated with this one. So I don't know who paid for it.
Maybe a bunch of brands. Anyway, yeah, interesting. Either way, I think it's not a bad thing for that sort of content to be in front of a non-cycling market. So
I mean, if nothing else, it sort of just exposes people to, like, even if they look at that and think, like, what the hell is this crap? It still maybe plants the seed in some small percentage of people's minds that, like, maybe that's not a terrible idea. So the other day I was having coffee with a buddy of mine, and as we were kind of wrapping up, this person pulled up on an urban aero. So I have an urban aero. I think most people know that at this point. And
you have an urban aero? You've never mentioned it before,
I've never
James.
talked about it. So he saw mine, I saw his. We sort of pointed at each other. We're like, hey, what's like? And then next thing you know, we're talking for like 30 minutes, just totally nerding out on bucket bikes. And a funny thing, so like exchange numbers and stuff, and like we just started chatting. But what's funny is later that day, he texted me a picture of the parking lot at his kid's preschool at pickup at the end of the day, and there were 4 of them in the parking lot. So there's at least 5 Urban Arrows in Boulder.
Have you considered setting up a Urban Arrow Appreciation Club of Boulder?
I have not, but I'm starting to wonder if
Cargo
this should
Bikes
be
of Boulder?
Yeah, I have not, but I'm starting to wonder if I should start looking at these sort of like whale watching. Like whales always have like distinctive markings, and that's how you identify them. Maybe I'll start cataloging them to see like if I can identify different urban
migration
arrows.
Habits of the urban arrows of Boulder.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
Interesting. Yeah, different sticker patterns.
See
stuff
if they
like
have
that.
a mating habit if they start to increase in numbers.
Pushing a little too far, Dave. A little too far.
Yeah. Oh.
Anyway, not a huge discussion topic, but that was on my mind. I just found that intriguing to see that on a site like that.
Yeah, cool.
right,
James for mayor of Cargo Bikes of Boulder.
I don't know. We did establish that mine. He did think his was older initially, and then we realized that mine was older. So definitely. I did win on that one. Anyway, Dave. Moving on. We've been having some fun with the pick one segment that we kind of stopped doing for a little while and then resurrected. So what's our category this week?
Gravel wheels is where I thought we should go, and not necessarily picking one gravel wheel, but I thought it'd be fun to talk more broadly about the things we look for if we were to pick a gravel wheel. Because there's a lot of options out there, and there's a lot of options that are very similar on paper, at least. And so I think there's actually quite a few good options out there. But yeah, I thought, what if you were to buy a gravel wheel tomorrow, what sort of elements you'd be looking for, what features you'd be looking for, and perhaps, where you'd end up. So from my point of view, like in a gravel wheel or an off-road wheel, like I really want serviceability. I want ease of replacement. Say a stick gets into the spoke, I want to be able to replace those spokes.
Normal parts.
But yeah, let's start with the rim, James, because there's a lot of talk about width of rim, hookless versus hooked. And I think when it comes to gravel, I think a lot of people assume that wider is better, but I think there's a limit to that. So if you were to have to pick one width, what would it be?
Probably 25 mil for a gravel wheel, I think. That seems to be the sweet spot that I've settled on.
For what tire width?
For roughly about a 40, give or take a bit, because it doesn't flatten out the profile that much. It does give really good support. I often like to run inserts in my gravel tires, especially since we have so many, the stuff around here is just so rocky. And that lets me run a lower pressure without the tires folding over. And then again, the insert helps me from destroying the rim when I smash into a rock somewhere. But yeah, 25 mil I think is about the sweet spot, at least from what I've gathered, and certainly for the size tires that I'm using.
Agreed.
If you were going like appreciably wider, like if you were consistently running 50s, then I'd maybe go wider than that. But otherwise, you can do an awful lot with a 25 mil wide rim.
Yeah. And the squaring off of the tire is a big one for me as to why I don't want wider with a 40-ish mil tire. I'm really happy with that 25 mil width myself.
What are your thoughts on aluminum versus carbon?
I would be happy on both. I don't think, I think given my own personal budget, I'd probably settle on I'd probably pick a nice aluminum rim versus a cheap carbon rim. But both have their benefits. Carbon can, in theory, help build a lighter wheel that has more stiffness to it. Aluminum is really a price point choice, is how I see it. How do you view it?
I think it depends a bit on, and again, I know we beat this to death, but gravel, again, is like there's a wide spectrum of gravel riding. And if I think about the sorts of wheels that I've ridden in the past that I've really enjoyed for different reasons, like on the aluminum side, for example, I think still one of my top picks is that DT Swiss GR 1600. I can't remember the price right off the top of my head, but I remember it being pretty fair for what it is. Like it was a like 240 quality hub, really nice rim, good dimensions, really well built, pretty light. And I remember that wheel set had a really nice ride quality. I mean, aluminum does, generally speaking, ride softer than carbon, particularly if you're talking about a deeper section carbon rim. And I'm not super fussed with aerodynamics on gravel
same.
For most of the type of gravel that I do.
Yeah. I'd rather have a damped ride quality than an aero rim on gravel.
Yeah, exactly. And then for a rim like that, like I will say there is definitely something to the claim that carbon rims, I mean, yeah, if you hit them too hard, they're going to crack or shatter or whatever. But generally speaking, the threshold to which you have to get to, like the impact threshold to which you have to get to inflict some kind of damage is generally pretty high on carbon. Yeah. Like I would say usually if you hit something that absolutely broke a carbon wheel, 100% it would have broken an aluminum wheel. Whereas an impact that would have dented an aluminum wheel might not have done anything to a carbon wheel. But anyway, regarding that DT Swiss GR1600, because again, I do often run inserts, I'm quite comfortable running that kind of like softer, maybe like slightly more damage prone rim, just because I don't worry about it as much because there's an insert in there.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think on those DT Swiss rims, just to save you a corrections corner next week, I think it's a 350 level hub in there.
Oh, fine. Either way, it's a Star Ratchet.
Yeah, Star Ratchet hub. So, okay. So rim, we've got 25 mil internal we agree on. Probably a shallow profile for ride quality reasons. Hookless? Hooked? Don't care?
Yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah, me neither.
I haven't really had any issues with it. I don't run high pressures on gravel. I am not super concerned with like pressure related blow-offs, again, because that's just not an issue. Because I'm usually running somewhere between 30, 35 PSI, sometimes maybe a little bit lower depending on what I'm doing. That said, I think it hasn't really mattered a whole lot because, again, if I think about my favorite gravel wheels, the ones that immediately come to mind, I already mentioned that DT Swiss aluminum one. Yep. That Roval Terra CLX has been very high on my list before. Yep. Super light, kind of like a semi-hooked rim, sort of, I think is what they call it. Super versatile. Like the Terra CL has been like a killer value for a lot of people.
That's my pick. Yeah.
And then for like a go fast gravel wheel, I think my pick has still been like, I'm not sure I found something that really appeals to me more than that Hunt 42 Limitless gravel. Okay. Because they have that super wide external width. It's like 36 mil. Pretty light.
Did you find it comfy?
Say again?
Did you find it stiff? Did you find it?
It's a little stiff for sure. But again, for like a go fast gravel bike, where the conditions are not quite as rough, perhaps.
Like a steamboat kind of gravel race.
Yeah, more like a dirt road sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Those wheels are awesome. Like they're tangibly faster.
Interesting.
And because it's Hunt, they're consumer direct. They're a little bit less expensive. It's like those are the three that stick out in my head, and I like them. I like them all for different reasons.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I mean, you've just mentioned 3 complete wheels, but say we were building up a wheel set. You've found a rim.
That?
People can do it. Like, say, you just mentioned it. Yeah, say if they bought
Is that a new thing, Dave?
The Forge+Bond, if that you just mentioned before, if they bought that and followed your advice, they'd be building a wheel set at this point. So, what spoke are you picking? Steel? You're picking spoke?
I would still go with a bladed steel spoke because even at more moderate speeds, I still think some element of aero is important, at least in the spoke, just because, again, like I think people underestimate how much a spoke can matter in that sense. Like it's an awful lot of linear surface area churning through the air.
Yeah.
And so I rode those Bird Sparrow, I think that's what they were called. They're like super crazy light gravel wheels. And they were definitely super crazy light. They rode amazingly well. They use these like fiber composite, like basically like fabric spokes. String essentially. Yeah. And but going even at like moderate speeds, like it really felt like you were dragging a balloon behind you or dragging a parachute behind you.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, that's still a wheel I'd love to ride. I haven't managed to ride one yet, but I'm the same. I'm still steel spoke, and I can tell you, carbon spokes for me off road are a big no in my mind. I don't like the ride quality they produce, which is stiffer than a steel spoke, but also I just don't like the idea of having a spoke that expensive that might see a stick at any moment. So
and it's interesting that even though even though proponents of carbon spokes will offer up pretty readily that they're saying like the carbon spokes are stronger than steel ones.
Yep.
That may very well be, but it is still easier for me to get a replacement steel spoke than a carbon one.
It is. It sure is. Yep. And significantly cheaper. Okay, hub. What are you... If you had to pick one hub, what are you putting in the center of your wheels?
You know, for gravel, I will say like I'm a lot pickier with mountain bike wheels just because with all the technical climbing stuff that we have here, engagement speed really does matter to me quite a lot. But for gravel, not so much. And for that, I still really, really like the traditional DT Swiss Star Ratchet. It's really hard to beat. Like for all those reasons that you mentioned, it's very reliable. It's light enough. It's super, super easy to work on. You can get parts all over the place. Like it's hard to beat.
Traditional Star Ratchet, the 2-piece or the EXP hub?
Definitely the 2-piece. I'm not really a fan of the EXP.
You're picking a 350 hub over a 240 then?
Yeah,
basically.
350.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Which is we've basically just described a Roval Terra CL wheel. Yeah.
Yeah,
which is
or
what I run on my own gravel bike.
Either that or that DT Swiss GR 1600 that I mentioned already.
That's funny. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. The pick one. I'd say with gravel, like there's actually a lot of really nice hubs on the market. So I'd say if you want colors and you're after a certain color theme to pick your bike, then go ahead and pick a brand with colors. Like you're still going to have a great time. You're going to end up with a durable hub, whether it's Hope or Industry 9 or Chris King or
Project 321 has gravel. Project 321 has gravel hubs coming out now.
All of these are amazing hubs that I wouldn't for a second question getting for my own bike. But yeah, price point wise, it's hard to beat a DT Swiss 350.
It is really hard to beat. It's almost like, I don't know, I guess it's sort of like buying a Toyota. Like maybe not necessarily the most exciting option.
It's the Toyota Camry or Corolla of hubs.
Yeah, kind of. Like definitely not the most exciting, but damn, does it work just fine? And like it gets the job done.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, there you go. I think we've kind of picked one. I think we're in agreement.
I think
on that.
We did. I'm not going to say we're in rare agreement because we do often agree on stuff, but like we definitely came to a consensus on that one. Anyway, all right. Moving on to our next segment. Let's do our weekly PSA here, Dave. This one, like something about pulley wheels. What are you talking about here?
Yeah, so this one came through from a member, Tim Dool, and basically it was that he had forgotten that jockey wheels wear out. So he had been through a few seasons of cross racing, had replaced the chainring a few times over, but had neglected those jockey wheels. So his little Ninja Stars that he was left with finally got replaced, and it improved shifting and just a better feeling drivetrain. Reminded him that he probably shouldn't have left those as long as he did, and that maybe they should be replaced along with the other components. And I think that's a pretty good reminder for everyone else that, everything that moves on your bicycle and everything that sees friction on your bicycle is technically a wear item. And consider all the parts that are moving and working and see what needs to be replaced in doing so.
I'm at least happy to hear that he noticed how sharp the teeth were and wasn't sitting there thinking to himself, like, wait, are pulley wheels supposed to have teeth on them? I don't really remember now.
Yeah, I should file those off. Yeah.
At least they weren't totally smooth. I'm not sure I've ever seen any that were just worn completely smooth. Speaking of pulley wheels, if someone does notice that the ones that they have now seem kind of worn, what are your feelings on OEM versus aftermarket replacements?
I think there's a few factors there. One, how much you care about what other people think of your bike, and whether you think having an aftermarket pulley wheel looks cool, then go for it. But I think fundamentally the benefits of changing said pulley wheels are pretty small, and your shifting will typically be the quietest with the stock pulley wheels. I think generally speaking, just spend the $10, $15 and stick with what your derailleur came with. Unless you're after something very specific.
Thoughts on plastic versus aluminum?
Plastic's quieter in both shifting and in running. So that's the benefit to plastic. Aluminum, in theory, would be more durable, but generally speaking...
I think I've found the opposite, actually.
Yeah, so in theory it is, but in reality you end up wearing the anodizing off the aluminum far quicker, and they look significantly more worn far quicker than the plastics tend to. So yeah, I don't even think there's a durability benefit to changing to metal, and you definitely get more noise. So I still, yeah, I typically just would say replace with what your derailleur came with.
Okay.
They're cheap.
I think
they're cheap. They're durable. They're proven. They work.
That's true.
I think
you can probably get them.
Yeah, you can probably get them. That said, if you're a watt weenie and you're really chasing every single last watt and you're already on a wax chain, the chain makes the biggest difference. And you've done everything else, I would say some of the higher end pulley wheels can make your drivetrain feel that little bit smoother. And it's predominantly through like lighter seals and the use of oil versus grease, but there is some difference there. So yeah, the stock pulley wheels on some of these derailleurs, especially like say a Shimano Ultegra derailleur, there is actually a reasonable amount of friction through those pulley wheels. They're just not, some of them aren't even using bearings, they use bushings. So I think there are some gains to be had there, but don't expect to actually see it on the clock.
Yeah, a lot of the aftermarket ones for sure though are better fidget spinners.
Absolutely better fidget spinners. Yep. And people who know you're doing well in your career when you have them fitted to your bike.
If you can't afford a fancy car, maybe just put some fancy pulley wheels on your bike.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, Dave, let's wrap up the show with some little bits of smaller news here. 3T just announced their new Strada Italia. It's based on their existing Strada Aero road bike. As far as I can tell, and from the images and based on their press release and stuff, it looks like it's basically the exact same shape. It's still again, Aero road bike. It's designed for wider tires. They optimize it around like 30, 35 mil width as measured tires. But that frame is now made in 3T's new Italian factory using resin transfer molding technology, where you essentially kind of weave dry carbon fiber, almost like a sock, and then you stick it on the mold, and then you essentially like force resin through it.
A method that neat. Time we're sort of a pioneer in.
For a long time.
As far as cycling, yep.
So yeah, kind of interesting that they have that. Frame sets are starting at about $6,600 US with a headset stem, bar, and seat post. So yeah, kind of intriguing. Again, like another one of those things that doesn't make me want to like it doesn't compel me to run out and get one exactly, but I do find it interesting. Dave, what's new from Bike Yoke?
Yeah, they've got the version 3 of their Revive seat post. I'm actually a big fan of this dropper seat post. A lot
of people are.
Yeah, I still own the Gen 1, and it's been incredibly flawless. I've never had such a positive experience with any dropper before. And yeah, they've up to their version 3, and basically, yeah, they've introduced adjustable travel to it via shims that a little bit more difficult to install than some other posts, but they've done that for what they claim are durability reasons. They're using mostly interchangeable parts, so we praised Chris King earlier for keeping backwards compatibility in place, and Revive have done that as well. I believe up to like 90% of the parts in this post are backwards compatible.
I'm so into that trend.
Yep. There's 15 millimeters lower stack, so you can get more drop for a given amount of visible seat post in your frame. And yeah, I think those are probably the main features. And Bike Yoke is a bit more of a premium brand, so it is a more expensive seat post. It's more in the price point of say like a Fox Transfer Factory or a Wolf Tooth seat post versus something like a 1-Up, which is much more mid-priced. So not for everyone, but love the seat post. And I guess the Revive, the name comes from the ability to purge it of air from the piston. So it has a little 4mm hex key at the top of it, and you put your 4mm hex key, or you can leave the little supplied lever in place, and you basically press down on this bolt while dropping the seat post, and that purges the seat post of air. So Wolf Tooth now have a similar feature. The RockShox Reverb Axis has a similar feature now, but Bike Yoke were the first to do it, and it works really well.
It's like a little fart button for your seat post.
Yeah.
Just let it expel itself of excess gas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Oh, jeez.
Speaking of Wolf Tooth, so they recently announced their new Narwolf Rev 2 chain guide. It's got a pretty neat collet type adjustment that you can use to. It's super easy to adjust the cage depending on your chain line. It's basically just single bolt, and then you just sort of loosen that up and slide it around to wherever you need it to go. Looks like to be pretty easy. That plastic cage comes in colors. Replacements, if you break one, are super cheap. They're like $5, which seems pretty cool. It comes in two different mounting styles, one with ISCG 05 mounts for mountain bikes, or you can do bottle cage mounts for gravel and cyclocross bikes. Not too expensive, $50. Most of it's machined aluminum, except for that, plastic cage section. Yeah, pretty neat. I think Wolf Tooth has got a pretty neat thing going. Like they just make a lot of useful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I've used the Gen 1 version of this chain guide before and really got on with it. It's one of my favorite chain guides, simple, top mount chain guides. So, yeah, it's nice to see it revised and a bit cheaper.
Finally, Dave, on the little news front here, I think everyone's safe to say is used to prices going up for like everything these days.
Yeah.
They never seem to go down. Which direction have Zwift subscription prices gone?
Yeah, I'd say this news, that whether it impacts anyone, whoever it impacts would probably already know the news, but Zwift have increased their prices by almost a third, and it's their first price increase since 2017, so probably a long time coming at this point, but yeah, I think memberships have jumped up from like roughly $15 a month to $20 a month, so not a small increase, but about time probably compared to, given all the other competition had done so in the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, definitely, we are not. I would say no one ever is stoked about something getting more expensive that they use. It is interesting, though, that they haven't had a price increase since 2017 because
that's a long time.
Because I think for a lot of people, it's like, it's 2017. Wasn't that long ago? It was 7 years ago now. Like, it was a long time ago.
And we went through, there's been a pandemic that saw them spike in popularity to enormous heights. And so I think, I would have thought they perhaps would have taken advantage of that to increase demand to raise prices. But I guess, as more users were coming in, then so was their profitability would have been going up by that much. So perhaps this price increase is now a reaction to them seeing a slow in user growth and now needing to improve profitability other ways.
Could be. My understanding, I actually was just at Zwift HQ recently, and my understanding is that they've always wanted to be massive. They just want to be mainstream fitness and gaming, not necessarily specifically for enthusiast cyclists.
Yeah.
And it seems like I kind of got the impression that they feel like they've maybe plateaued a little bit on the enthusiast cyclist market, which is not surprising, again, just looking at how much growth they got during the pandemic. And they are trying to go more mainstream now. And I mean, I'm not sure if increasing pricing is the way to do that necessarily, but it certainly could, again, Dave, like you said, be a reflection of the fact that they maybe don't have quite the volume that they want. Hard to say, like without looking at their balance sheet or anything like that. It's interesting. But yeah, the fact that they've gone up $5 a month, first price increase since 2017, it's not huge, I guess. Yeah. I mean, $5 times 12 months, that's $60 a month. It's not a huge difference, but yeah, I mean, I guess what's nice for them is, I guess what's nice is that Zwift, certainly with like the latest round of software updates that they just rolled out, they do seem to be getting better. Like they're adding more environments, they're adding more features, stuff like that. Like it doesn't seem like they're just sitting on their hands. No, for sure. Yeah, I mean they're fighting to remain the top dog in the cycling space, and obviously they're a small fish compared to Peloton, but it's are they? I'm not sure, actually.
I mean, Peloton's fallen way off as well, but it's, I believe Peloton's user numbers are quite a bit higher.
I think their user numbers are quite a bit higher, but I bet their profit and loss statements look a lot worse.
Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. Yeah. And I mean, both Zwift and Peloton are competing with the biggest competitor of all, which is the outdoors. So,
does the outdoors have a marketing department?
It's based in Boulder, isn't it? You and I used to work for it.
Who do we get a sample of that?
I don't know. All right.
All right. Well, speaking of indoor cycling, there is one last thing I forgot to talk about here. There is we see all sorts of crazy stuff on Kickstarter and whatnot, but there is an indoor bike that I actually had been seeing pop up in my Instagram feed every now and then. They clearly bought some sort of ad campaign. And it's from this company called Saga Holographic. So they just launched a Kickstarter campaign not too long ago, and they have this thing called the Holo Bike, HOLO bike, capital B, of course, all one word. It's essentially an indoor stationary bike, and all the usual stuff like electromagnetic resistance, adjustable fit, so on and so forth. What's intriguing about it is it's sort of Peloton-esque in that it has a built-in display. And they are running their own software, but the thing that supposedly makes this thing different is they have it's some sort of like what they're saying a holographic display. Like it supposedly gives you a much more immersive experience. There's some sort of like funky light filter. What are they calling it here? A panoramic light field display envelops your senses, giving you a visceral sense that you're there on the trail. So intriguing. It looks like their campaign's already funded, actually. But yeah, it's on Kickstarter. It's called the Holo Bike. Again, it's from Saga Holographic, SAGA. I don't really know what I think about this thing yet, but I'm
looking at it for the first time as you're telling it to me. Gimmick.
Yeah, it's kind of like
I'm ruling it out now. It strikes me as a number of other successfully kickstarted bikes that mostly outdoor bikes that we've seen come to market, and I can't think of any that had fully met their potential or their claim excitement. So
I mean, my thing is and kind of the reason why I brought this up after we talked about Zwift is, Zwift is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's what basically everyone uses as far as a software package in terms of indoor riding, and Zwift clearly is not going for realism here. Like it's very kind of cartoony, gamey. Like they describe it as a game. Whereas these folks are trying to produce like a very realistic experience of like riding through the woods and stuff like that. But my question I have to wonder is like, even if they can get the hardware right, if they don't have a deep enough suite of software of like environment to ride in, like I don't see where they're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the features of this that I'm reading, it's got a camera built into the monitor that reads the rider's position. So your little figure on the screen adjusts to basically what you're doing on the bike. So like if you're out of the saddle, it's picking that up. Anyway, I think there's probably some merit to that tech, but yeah, I'd be very surprised if it works as well as intended.
It feels very Silicon Valley-y. Anyway, all right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and close on that note. I mean, there's still 50 as of this recording. There's still 53 days to go in that Kickstarter campaign.
How much is a bike?
$2,600. The Kickstarter price, which is $400 off what their projected retail is supposed to be, with anticipated delivery of 2024 December of this year. So
that's actually going to be July 2025 by Kickstarter numbers,
or 6 or 7 or never.
No, it'll happen. I've got faith that it'll happen. I'm an optimist in that regard. I typically like to add 6 months to Kickstarter dates, and then at that point you can expect your 3-month notice of delivery.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to keep an eye on this one because I'm intrigued. But again, I don't really see it going anywhere just because they're running their own system. So we'll see. All right. Well, Dave, let's go ahead and wrap up because that'll do it for this week's episode of Geek Warning. There's almost an hour on the button. Dave, what sort of final words do you have for our listeners here today?
Yeah. If you've liked this episode and you're not already a member, then please consider joining us and helping us create these episodes and everything else we do on Escape Collective. So yeah, head to escapecollective.com/member and you can join there. And by following that link, we can see that you've come from the podcast. So yes, we're watching you, we're tracking you. But it's not as creepily as what James suggested at the beginning of the episode where we're signing you up to everything you don't want to be signed up to.
What I was suggesting wasn't creepy. It was just mean.
Yeah. So, but yeah, please consider supporting what we do and letting us continue to do it. And for those that do that already, thank you. Thank you to all of our members out there. I'm going to leave it there.
Well said, Dave. Well said. Well, yeah, we'll leave it right there. And again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Geek Warning.
Cheers.